Yes, this way?
Yeah.
Yeah? No?
Yes.
This way you can hear me? Is the mic on?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. Talking about being spooked and kicked. You must have stopped me. I've never said this about myself, but the tongue, can you feel that? Yes? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, I've never said this about myself. I have to leave the microphone now.
You have to reach the microphone.
But it keeps coming, going on and on.
You hold it there as well.
Okay. I've never said this about myself before, but returning to Ghana in these circumstances demands full recognition of my motivation as a religious scholar. My world of the academy is wholly given over to the idea of incentives as the cure for the return of religion. And we find ourselves thinking that only incentives stand between us and the dark ages of classicism and atheism. The TLS Times literary supplement asked 2 years ago to write an article on the return of religion. It was a major anniversary of the TLS. 40 years earlier, they had published a series of historical essays that actually changed the historical world in the United Kingdom as well as the United States. And they wanted to celebrate that. One of the predictions they made in the 1960s was that religion was finished. 40 years later, they discovered that religion had come back with a vengeance. And they thought, being a secular journal, that they should be honest and recognize that fact. So I was asked to write that paper, that essay. But so this was the old, and still is actually, the prevailing attitude, that incentives will help us to overcome the challenge of religion. The other approach is the approach of idealism and virtues, which the critics dismiss as naive and gullible. Anyway, the other approach to the incentives approach is the approach based on idealism and virtues. No one who has applied for a foundation grant has not submitted to calculations of incentives as the panacea for religion as superstition, pure and simple. The grant application then sets out a program of effective displacement and eventual eradication of religion. The breeding grounds of religion, according to the critics, are the spawning grounds of backwardness. Economic incentives will bring about advancement, causing religion to recede to the same extent. Now, although there is much profit to be had by this way of proceeding upon religion, and I cannot say that I have myself resisted the temptation entirely, it is difficult, at least for me, to square it with the world of the Muslim chief. Neither naive nor gullible, the chief was astir, alive with the religious spirit, long before and long after economic incentives wreaked havoc on people's lives, and not just in Nigeria. We have all learned many hard lessons between the Enron fiasco and the Gulf oil spill in the United States. The whistleblower in the case of the Enron scandal, it happened, was not swayed by economic incentives. And as a practicing Christian, whom I met recently, it was clear that she was not going to lie down and take it, as it were. Motivation for her was indeed based on ideals and virtue. I will enter a caveat later, but for now let me say that the Christian Africans today face a titanic task in meeting the needs of their people without succumbing to an expedient view of truth, without converting the appeal of religion into a useful commodity of self-enrichment. It is true that poverty and depredation have taken their toll in Africa, aggravated by corruption and misrule. But I don't think it's true that Africa is filled only with misery and its expedient remedies. Africa is also full of the idealism, the courage, the resolve, and the commitment to serve others, because, like us, they are made in the image and resemblance of God. The church teaches the value of the common good as a direct outcome of the dignity with which God has invested us, without regard to economic or social considerations. The Bible does not say that God so loved the world that he sought to gain from it. Rather, the Bible says, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. The old chief didn't get that far in his tussling with the creed, but I think that is the answer to his puzzlement. In my view, the distinction between incentives and ideals is crucial to how we look at religion in Africa, and it does challenge Muslims no less than Christians. Can the love of God and neighbor motivate us to undertake works of mercy, reconciliation, forgiveness, benevolence, and justice? And the resounding answer is yes. In a moving account of his conversion, Philip Toynbee, son of the historian Arnold Toynbee, describes in an essay he published in 1979 how, as an atheist, he was a hardcore Marxist. He had such a negative, pessimistic view of human motivation, saying how surprised he was by the depth of the Christian insight on the subject. His pronouncements startled his circle of enlightened elite friends whose genial, even convivial, sense of privilege and entitlement spared no thought for others less fortunate. It amounted to benevolent indifference, hardly a virtue in a world of real need. If you take the view that virtues and ideals have real consequence and do make a difference to the world, you have to question whether incentives are what they claim to be. Imagine a schoolboy being given incentive to do a piece of his homework. In time, he makes the connection a hard and fast one. He will work only for the reward, and as such, homework ceases to have any meaning for him beyond the reward he gets for it. And that severs homework, cuts it off from any idea that education is a value in its own right, and that homework is a building block that fits into a bigger purpose. Incentives do not deal with that. On the factory floor, in the office, in the lab, as well as in the classroom, incentives are a threat to meaningful, purposeful existence. The church is the safety barrier against the degrading consequences of incentivized living. Public order itself is in peril. It is not naive that the church proclaims and teaches the truth. It is naive that truth is deemed a matter purely of incentives. We package and market motivation at our peril.